Welcome to the City of Charlotte's Open for Business Mentorship podcast, where we feature local entrepreneurs and partner resources to discuss ways to overcome the challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic. It's our goal to connect small business owners with the people and resources necessary to thrive as we all move forward beyond these challenges, because moving forward means moving together.
Hello, Charlotte. I'm Mayor Vi Lyles, and we're here today to talk about Open for Business. This is a mentorship series, and today we're going to focus on people that have started businesses around children and children's needs and requirements, and maybe just a little bit of retail included in that. You know, COVID still is with us. We've struggled since late spring through all of this time. And one of the things that the City of Charlotte is most proud of has been the opportunity to work with small businesses that have been impacted by the COVID pandemic, small businesses that have continued to thrive and participate in our economy, small businesses that participated in our small business Access to Capital program. Today we're joined by Destiny Gilliam.
Hello.
Destiny owns creative reading.
Yes, ma'am.
She supports our kids that are so much in need of the ability to continue to be educated during this pandemic. We're also joined by Ann Ward. Ann Ward has a business that caters towards children and food and teaching them to cook. Flower Power. Is that it?
That's right.
So thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad. So I want to explore a little bit about how did you come up with an idea? What creative juices were flowing at the time that you decided that there was actually an opportunity to help children learn to cook, and that could be a business. The idea that children and their education is important, and how you turn that into an opportunity for entrepreneurship. You want to start off, Destiny?
I can. So my background is in education. I was a CMS teacher, 4th and 5th grade. And while being in the classroom, it was such a heavy emphasis on state testing. And being an older teacher, an intermediate teacher, I realized there was a literal gap between teaching students how to read and teaching students how to comprehend.
Oh, yes. Very familiar with that.
Yes. And so it became a passion of mine, because what was happening is that once students made it to 4th grade, phonics completely stopped. And so we were getting kids who were reading on like the pre-K reading level, kindergarten reading level. And I just basically began to research how to effectively teach reading. And I'm talking about like the science of reading. And so that's where the creative reading coach came from. We literally take and teach students how to read from a phonics standpoint and a phonemic awareness standpoint, to basically close that gap so they can have access to the state test.
So how long have you been doing this this method of teaching students?
2018.
Well, you were a little bit before the pandemic.
Yes, ma'am.
So talk about what you were doing in 2018 and what you began to do after COVID started.
Oh, that's a good question. So 2018, the business started. I was just sharing with Ann that we started in a co-working space and, just began seeing families and sharing our strategies. The pandemic hit. And everything was in person, because we believe in multi-sensory learning with the sand tray, and everything was very hands-on and tactile. Mm-hmm. And so once the pandemic came, it literally became, we had to take our entire curriculum and switch it to be virtual, which became a headache because kids were, at the very onset of the pandemic, kids were transitioning to online learning. And so a lot of our students were, they were disturbed because they had to learn online for regular school. Then they had to come to reading tutorials, which was no fun anyway, because reading is a difficult thing for them. So we had to figure out, how do we take the curriculum, meet them where they are, and take into consideration their school.
That's a big adjustment, not only for you, but I can tell by the way you talk how much you care for the children.
Yes.
And I probably expect that was toughest for you as well, to begin to see how they were changing.
Yes.
So let's talk about something maybe a little bit different, maybe more messy. I would assume that children are more messy cooking.
Oh, yes, messy fun, and that's what the parents say. They're glad to bring them to Flower Power because they spill the flour, and we're like, hey, you know what? That's fine. It's messy in the kitchen. It's a creative process. So you asked about how I got involved in it. I've just always loved cooking as a personal hobby. I was in cooking clubs with friends and just would do it for my own children. And I got into looking into how to merge my enjoyment, my personal enjoyment, and make it into some kind of a profession. I wasn't really a cake decorator or something like that, but I just enjoyed cooking and teaching my kids to cook. So I did research and found out that Flower Power is a franchise that's based out of North Carolina, actually. They've been around for 11 years. They're based out of Raleigh. And I started looking in the Charlotte area. There was an existing one at Quail Corners, and I opened the second one in Charlotte in 2018. And my background before that was I used to work with kids. I've always kind of off and on worked with kids or in teaching, and I was doing some corporate work, but I've always enjoyed training. Mm-hmm. So it was just a nice merging of my professional, kind of like my strengths that I've learned over a long time, and then my enjoyment of cooking and children and cooking with children. And so we opened in 2018, and it was very popular. Obviously, there's so many things that are not taught at school anymore, and parents are so busy. We've got second generations that never were taught to cook now. Right. So it was really good for kids to come in and learn the basics of things. And then when the pandemic hit in 2020, it was huge because our service model was very much in person. We don't package food to sell like a lot of restaurants can. So early on, we did some free Facebook Live events with cooking, and we had that posted on our Facebook, and that was a lot of fun. But we basically modified our in-person. That's the biggest approach that we've taken for our change. We've limited class size. We've been masking up since before the mandate. We've been socially distancing. We propped the doors open, and we individualize portions a lot more and emphasize hand washing like we always have, but we glove up a lot more and things like that. But it's worked, and the kids are excited to be there. So thank goodness.
Wow. So I've always thought about cooking as being science.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And how do you teach how things work? I mean, it's like flour and eggs. What does that mean? What do you get as a result?
Yes.
But in this case, think about your business. You said you were a franchise. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I would assume about March, things just stopped.
Things stopped.
So
100%.
Both of you participated in the city's Access to Capital for Small Businesses program.
Yeah.
So tell me about that experience. What were some of the things that you found to be challenging about the experience, as well as some of the things that you think, without that opportunity, what would I have done?
How long you got?
We're going to take a few minutes, but I think people are very interested. The city of Charlotte pushed $70 million out for housing and for small businesses.
Yes.
The $30 million for small businesses, we wanted to make sure it had an impact, and that's why you're here today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell us about what that impact was. Who wants to go first?
I'll quickly go here because we were talking about, we both were sharing before we started talking here that I cried with relief. I would say literally cried with relief when I got that grant. It's made the difference between me not having to dip into my savings. So I'm working really hard. So now I know I don't have to work hard and go into debt.
Well, there's a lot. That is a big difference because once you go into debt, it just feels different. Like you're working for your passion, or you're working to pay off your debt.
And thank goodness I love what I do because if I didn't, it would be so much worse. But I will say in March when we closed, to your question here is, we book a lot of our revenue. The bulk of our revenue comes in the first quarter because we book a ton of summer camps. And so like most people in March, we didn't know what we were dealing with. We did not know what kind of monster we had here. So we had a lot of cancellations and refunds. And because it was that favorite word, unprecedented, we were not in a position to tell people we could not do that. So in March, when we had to close for a couple of months, we went into a negative revenue situation. So not only were we not generating, we were refunding money that had already been earned. So it was scary. It was hard. I'm very grateful that I have 2 other franchise owners in Charlotte that I could talk to that were going through it. Ginger owns the Quail Corners Flower Power, and my friend Shay owns the one in Lake Norman. And we talked with each other and really tried to rally and support each other. And that made a huge difference. So it was tough. It was tough.
It was tough, but you're here today.
I'm here today, and I got that grant, and I'm so grateful. So grateful I am.
Well, Destiny, what happened when you applied, and how did you use the access to capital?
So a friend of mine actually sent me the grant, sent me the link, and it was random on Facebook. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay. And as I started doing the application, it was super easy. Like it didn't require anything outside of my, like I think I filled it out in a matter of like 15 to 20 minutes. And I kind of just tucked it away and moved on, you know. Mm-hmm. And so a week passed by, and then I got the email. And I literally, was jumping up and down, screaming, because for us, well, number one, we are, this is a grassroots effort that I'm doing. So it's literally just me. And I'm looking at the kids, and then I'm watching my families basically either be laid off or lose their jobs. So their income, our program was the first program that was cut in order for them to continue to pay for groceries. And so we went from full enrollment down to 2 families. And I had just hired 2 additional staff members. So I was like, okay, but I'm not the one to really give up. I keep fighting. I didn't know where the money was going to come from, but I'm like, we're going to keep on training. And so when the money came in, it allowed for us to, number one, train the appropriate staff, because we needed the staff that could be able to be flexible, to go from being in person to being online. Another thing that it allowed, and it was born out of COVID, we usually have a regular tuition. This mask is really funny.
That's okay. You're fine. You know, I as our producer, Eric, tells me, he says, this is real. This is podcast, real life. So don't worry about the mask. Okay. You just keep on telling the story.
Okay. One thing that was born out of it is we're based out of regular tuition, like any other learning center. But what I was finding is the students who needed us most could not afford the tuition. And so for me, once I got my staff situated, it was like, how do I get this service in the right hands? So what the grant allowed me to do was start a sliding scale payment method for my students. Oh, that's
terrific.
And so now what that does is, instead of having, we have our regular base tuition rate, and then we just literally do it based on income. And so I tell my families all the time, money should not be a reason as to why your child does not know how to read. If you're willing to do the work and you're willing to, do a few documents, we'll take your child and we go based off income for 1 year. And you just have to come. And we believe in our program that much that we can get you done in and out in a year. And so that's what the grant did for us. I was able to keep my staff. I was able to grow my business. And then I was able to start that sliding scale fee. So it's been hard. It was a lot of crying nights, but, we're here.
Destiny, what I heard you say, you were dealing with children that saw the disparity in education. Yes. And then when they had COVID, you saw the health disparity, the unemployment disparity, yes, and all of that. And you've held all of that together.
I know.
I can't imagine. I bet you must be proud. Your family must be proud of you. But more importantly, are the kids reading well now?
Yes. I had a call with a parent yesterday, and he's based out of California. And his mom had problems with reading. And when he started with us, he was reading in mid-year kindergarten reading level. And he started with us. His first session was in October. He had his initial intake session in August. He's now reading as a 2.3. That's mid-year second grade.
That's fantastic.
We're talking about in a matter of months. And he's a part of the sliding. He's actually on this because the way we break it up, we have a scholarship for a few families, and then we tier it out scholarship tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. He's a part of that scholarship. And otherwise, he would have never had access to that. So it's by touching that one child, it's changing the entire family.
So I can't tell you how much this makes me, how proud I am, first and foremost, because
when you teach someone to read, you've changed their entire lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
To move someone from not being able to read at kindergarten to second grade,
Yes.
you have made their world entirely different. And so to the residents of our city, this investment worked.
Yes.
It's working for our kids. It's giving them an outlet. So, and I'm going to talk with you a little bit. You heard that story, but there's probably something in cooking that's not only educational, but creative.
Right.
So tell us about one of the kids that you feel like they have a great story.
Well, it's interesting. Early on, before this, before COVID happened, well, right after COVID happened, I did want to find a way to kind of feel like I was part of the solution of things. And so there were some kids that we would see that would want it to come. There are a lot of kids that were kind of left out, like you were saying, once COVID hit, because everybody's virtual. Not everybody's set up to be virtual. You might have a family at home that they don't have two parents there. So I started looking at, well, how can I help? How can I be creative and bring kids in here so that it helps with the family? So I did just start doing like a family a week could come in. And there was this one little girl who came in kindergarten, and she never had any school experience. Her mother worked in an ER, and it really kind of bothered me that here's somebody who works in the ER and is expected to pay for her child to go somewhere to sit on the computer to go to school. So she came and she loved it. She did very well. And we continued that with a local middle school for the last couple months, actually. We just kind of rotate different kids in and out. And they have really, it's been, I'm not going to say that it's always this perfect outcome. Sometimes the kids that are left behind don't do well no matter what with their virtual schooling situation. But we have seen kids that were struggling. And that is something that takes the financial pressure this grant does. I can have an extra kid in there a week. And it takes the financial pressure off of a family to be able to send their kids somewhere that's structured, and they do sometimes do better, So I think, and then the best part is not only do they do better because they're in a structured environment, instead of at home where they'll be playing on their laptop, they're in a structured environment that when they're not doing their schoolwork, they get to do some cooking, and they love it. They learn how to make homemade pasta, they learn how to make homemade pizza dough, and they've really enjoyed it. And the best thing is they bring it home, and then they get to help their family.
I'm going to get you two together, and we're going to have the best educated and the best cooking chefs of petite size. But I want to bring up something else. Both of you have talked about the ability for, you use the word often collective, we. And so talk to me about your staffing and how you've been able to retain people. Hopefully the access to capital financing helped, or funding helped you do that. Yeah. But what did it mean to the people you employ?
That's so pre-COVID, I was running the entire center by myself. I was delivering instruction, I was curriculum, I was HR, I was everything. And so I had made the decision. I was like, this is going to be my year where I'm going to expand and I want to put it out there. And so I made the decision to hire 2 teachers. I hired them, I think it was like the end of February, March 15th. Everything shut down. So I hired new teachers, and enrollment went from at its max capacity all the way down to 2 families. And so I was like, I didn't feel in my spirit, it didn't feel good to let them go. Just because I wanted to honor what I said to them. And believe it or not, they stuck with me. I was able to hire a 3rd teacher as we grew. Because what's happening now is as kids aren't in school online learning, moms and dads are realizing how difficult a time that their child is having in reading. Oh, yeah. So our business went from down here and then it picked right back up. So I was able to hire a 3rd person. And then I was also able to keep my virtual assistant. Without them, there would be no creative reading coach. Like we simply wouldn't exist because they deliver the instructions and then they make sure they handle the day-to-day aspect of it. So the funds from the grant help retain them and even support them and, give them like a little thank you gift as we got going good too. So it was good.
I often say 2 of my favorite words are give people grace and give them gratitude.
Yes.
That makes a difference. So what about in your case, Anne?
So I am so grateful to my staff, and it was really important for me to keep them busy through this unexpected closure and beyond. And plus just wanting to succeed with the business. And the grant really did allow me. I have a full-time manager that I work very closely with. Her name's Janet. She is an angel from heaven.
We all need angels, don't we?
An angel. She's been with me since we opened. And I've got an assistant manager who's also been with me since we opened. I mean, they saw Flower Power when it was rubble, so I've been able to keep both of them. I've been able to keep her on salary. And
Nice.
she is such a good person. She literally told me when this happened that she would work and I didn't have to pay her. And I was like, that is not happening.
Right.
So she just knew that she cares. And so I was able to continue to pay her. And I was able to, because I've been stretched very thin because my kids are unexpectedly home, with school as well. So I was wearing a lot of hats trying to run a business with that 5 days a week. So it allowed me to not feel that financial pressure that I had to also let people go. And that's huge because my staff has been wonderful through this. They've been totally on board with the mask wearing and the sanitation and just all the changes. And I'm grateful for it. And I'm grateful for being able to have the financial relief to keep them.
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how your business had to change. Whenever you're working with kids, there's lots of touching and hugging and things like that. So when it comes to the personal protective equipment that you needed, did you have the opportunity to be able to be successful at that? I know at the beginning it was hard. Everybody was saying, oh, we don't have enough. And then it seemed to me all of a sudden there was a lot.
Yes.
But at the same time, you're working with kids.
Yes.
So what does it mean? How do you do that?
Yeah. Really, the costs have gone way up with as far as that kind of stuff goes because we've bought a lot of masks. And you're right, early on, you could not. There was a black market for hand sanitizer. All the whiskey distilleries were making this stuff, and it smelled awful. And then finally, the people that actually make hand sanitizer started making it again. So we were buying a lot of that, and it was tough to find the wipes, and it was tough to. Then we had to get the touchless thermometers. So we just had to think way in advance, worst case scenario, and just know, let's get it now. And if we have to return it, we do. I did some bulk purchasing with the other Charlotte locations, which helped. And the hugging is hard. The kids love to hug. We love to hug them too if they approach us. But we basically have been doing air hugs.
Yes.
And we do kind of elbow high fives and things like that. And it's been a lot of more expense to your point, and a lot of planning. But we got there in the end. But yet it's just an interesting time with lower revenue stream with higher expense of that kind of stuff.
Right. One of the things that our Open for Business program did was we actually tried to connect people that had skills that could work with others. So I want to talk, I know that you're both busy doing what you do, but what about your marketing, your accounting? How did all of that work out? Were you able to build relationships with other small businesses? I heard you talk about your team of franchise owners and supporting each other. Now, I'm not sure how that works in a situation where you're teaching kids, but how did you find that support among your other small businesses to help you be able to manage this?
So for us, because we had the huge dip in the beginning and then we kind of spiked, it forced us to connect with other small businesses. We have a big presence like on YouTube. And so like a lot of interviews with other experts. So we do interviews with like pediatricians talking about ADHD. We did an interview, I forget her, I know her name, I see her face, but basically helping parents understand what is dyslexia, what dyslexia is not. So we really had to come together to create like these type of series of information for parents to understand. So that's been our biggest connection with small businesses.
I think about parents that are working and been able to continue to be employed, but you still have, the cost of your housing, the cost of transportation, the cost of food. So then you have your child.
Yes.
And you want them to be their very best. I believe, children come here and they're sponges.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, how did you work with the families? Did this access to capital in any way help you begin to build a base of knowledge and awareness with, you said YouTube, but what about personally with some of the families?
That is a good question. And I would have to say, honestly, to be quite honest, the biggest win that I've seen has been that sliding scale fee.
Mm-hmm.
Of taking that pressure off, because you have parents who would normally be able to afford, those type of rates. But when they don't know, it's a really unknown of what's going to happen. So it's like, I don't want to put my money into this program and then I don't know if I'm gonna have my job in a month. So for us, that was the biggest win, is having that sliding scale rate for families.
And your story about the kindergartner who had a mom who is an ER nurse.
Yes.
Essential workers, our frontline healthcare workers, that must have been stressful. Did you see it in the children? Did you see?
She was just happy to be around the other kids, I'll be honest with you. Kids are so in the moment a lot of times. That's one of the things I noticed, that she was just really happy to be there. I could hear it in her mom's voice. I told her when I talked to her on the phone, I was like, I can tell you need a break, and everybody needs somebody to give them a break sometimes. And so as far as small businesses and marketing, I think that there's been a lot of really natural, genuine interest in this community of small businesses to give back. You see it with the Loyalist Market. They did a lot of food deliveries and meals for middle school. I've partnered with other businesses by cross-promoting each other. That's been good. That's a way to just kind of help each other out. But yeah, you do see it with kids. Sometimes when the kids come in at first, you do see the stress because it's all the unknown. You're checking their temperature. You're giving the hand sanitizer. Everybody has masks. They can't see you smiling at them. But the kids have always been happy to be around each other. But I'm telling you, they are so much happier now because they are just joyful to be around other kids and to do something normal that's outside of the house. That's nice to see. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
it's perfect. But I'm going to pivot now, and pivot's a big word in COVID knees. I'm going to pivot to you personally. Two young women starting out, entrepreneurs, doing this at a time that's unprecedented, and using your words. How are you taking care of yourselves personally?
Oh, that's where I'm living right now.
Well, tell us how you're living, Destiny, for this.
You know what? It's so funny because when you're an entrepreneur and you first start out, everything is like go, 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 go. And you have to be everything. And what I realized is that I cannot give back to my community around me if I am empty. And even though it starts out with the best intentions of to give, I didn't want to end up resenting the work that I was doing. Because even running my business, I still am a single mom to 3. And it's like 2 of them are enrolled in schools. I have to be responsible for their virtual learning. And so the answer to your question is I literally live minute by minute, which is so different from me because I'm very type A by nature. Like everything has a rhyme and reason, but I literally live minute by minute, and I do what makes me happy in that moment. And so if that means I only work 4 hours a day and then the rest of my hours are spent with my kids, then that's what it is. And it's been tricky because I've had to build systems in my business to make that function. You know what I mean? But I couldn't go on that way, or I was going to experience burnout, and I wouldn't be able to really reach my goal. So it's almost like I had to let up off the gas to just realize where I'm really going.
Well, that's like the oxygen mask drops out, and you have to put it on first in order to protect others. So.
Yes.
What about you, Ann? What are you doing for self-care?
I'm going to be real here for a minute because I'm probably burnout adjacent. I'm not quite taking as good care of myself as that. What I do is I'm trying to get better sleep, but I'm stretched pretty thin right now. And I do recognize that. Up until this year, I was pretty good at taking care of myself. But right now, I spend time with friends. You know, I do try to see them occasionally when I can. And I try to get outside a lot with my family, spend a lot of time outdoors. And I call people who understand it. I talk to them, we laugh. We, probably have just cried and laughed a lot more this year than I ever expected with some friends that kind of understand what we're going through here. But I have taken a couple of girls' trips, but I've tried to be very safe. That's one of my things that was a real pleasure and a self-care point for me was travel before, but that's not been something that's possible this year. So it's a goal for me. So to be real, I need to work on it.
Well, I think that one of the very first things about women particularly is that we all know that that's what we do first, is to give so much. But at some point, we also have to know that there are people out to support us and to build us up. And look for those.
Yes.
Look for that. I love the idea of girl trips. And those trips are not like to foreign places or long plane rides. They're just things that can be a very simple, as you said, just a time to step back.
It's been a long 5 years since March.
Yes. I love that. I'm going to use that one, Anna. A long 5 years since March. So let me ask your hope. I think by nature, most of us are optimists. I think this country is built on entrepreneurship and the idea that if you have a good idea and you put the work behind it. But I think this COVID has made us question that a little bit. That you can do everything right and circumstances beyond your control. So when you think about what makes you optimistic or what gives you hope, what are some of the words that you would use? What are some of your thoughts about that?
I firmly believe that good will always outshine anything. And that it doesn't take a lot to do a lot. When I really look at the curriculum that I'm doing and the results that my kids are getting, there's no way you can measure that. So that's what keeps me going. I got a little emotional talking about that. Like I felt that. That's what keeps me going for sure. And I guess my hope, and I'm not going to say my desire is that students will have access to quality reading instruction. That's my hope.
Well, I
that was heavy.
No, it wasn't heavy. It was if you come from a background, I tell people my dad didn't graduate from high school, but he was really smart. And imagine if he had actually had the opportunity to finish high school, or that he could have gotten a GI Bill, but he couldn't because he was African American, to go to college. Those are the things that validate us. And so it's not heavy, it's real. It's very real. So thank you for sharing that. What about you, Ann?
I really feel very hopeful right now. There's been such wonderful news coming out about the vaccines. And I do feel like my customers are fantastic. I've had some really loyal customers, and they give me such hope because they are such cheerleaders, and they come back and we see them for multiple things. So I have so much hope because I think one of the, there are good things that have come out of this. One of the things that I think that have been really good is that it's made everybody take stock. And it's made them really, what is important to me? And I think for things like what we do, like education's so important, and cooking and family and those memories and those smells, all that stuff, those are important things because you're making memories together. So that's what gives me hope, is that coming out of this, the types of things that I am involved in involve joyful experiences. And that to me is very hopeful and something that I think people will seek out and continue to seek out, maybe more so than before. So that's my hope, at least. So knock wood.
Well, I think that's excellent hope. The idea that we are a community, and that's what pulls us through. So I'm going to ask you something. I know it's going to be, the holidays are coming up. So Ann, I have granddaughters. So what recipe should I give to them that they can cook?
Oh, yeah.
And Destiny, what book should they read to me? So,
How old are your granddaughters?
5, 4, and 2.
5, 4, and 2.
Okay, good.
Challenging.
Okay.
But the 5-year-old and the 4-year-old are reading sight words.
Nice.
Oh,
Yeah, so they have their sight words.
Yeah.
That's really
good.
plus.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I know these things because I didn't know that as a mom growing up. I mean, with my kids, I feel like, it was tough. But now that I understand the science of reading,
Yes.
I know sight words.
Yeah.
I love that.
So what do you think they could cook for me?
5, 4, and 2 years
Yes.
old. Oh my goodness.
The 2-year-old can just look.
They can look. Well, they can do some fun stuff, right? Because of their age. I think that at that age, they could probably do. We do these Santa strawberries, and you make some homemade whipped cream, and then you just cut a strawberry, and you put the whipped cream on top as the face, and then little mini chocolate chips on them, and the other part of the strawberry, it's like the little tip of it is the hat. So that's cute. I'll send you some if you want.
Okay, I'd love to.
And, pizza dough. I've got a really easy pizza dough recipe too that all three can do that. They can roll it out and have their own pieces, and that's always really fun too. So,
What kid doesn't like pizza?
I mean,
So do you have a website? Tell us about your website.
Absolutely. So if you go to flowerpowerstudios.com, and it's FLOUR, flowerpowerstudios.com, and my location is Charlotte Ray Farms. And you just click on locations in North Carolina, and it's Charlotte Ray Farms. And we've got a lot of Christmas things and holiday things. We've got a Hanukkah event coming up, so y'all check it out.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, so what are my granddaughters going to read?
So my answer is going to be vastly different than probably what you've heard before, okay? And the reason is that you want kids to find their own interests. So I'm all about them finding their own book, like gentle guiding. So you take them to the bookstore and you just say, hey, go at it. And then whatever they find interest in is what you read together, because they're 5, 4, and 2. What I would normally recommend is like you record yourself reading the book to them.
Oh, what a good idea.
And then let them follow along with their finger and listen to you. And that does 2 things. That's the fluency part. And that's also that connection part. And what happens is, especially with your 5-year-old, she's going to begin to think that she's reading. But that helps with like the finger matching to each word, going left to right, like all of that. So it's no particular book. It's just what she wants to do in your connection that you make.
Oh, that's cute. I love that.
Thank you.
I'm going to tell my husband, my grandma.
I have to say, this has been Open for Business Mentorship Series, but I feel like I've been the person that's being mentored. Destiny, thank you. I hadn't thought about recording and letting someone read. What a wonderful idea. So all of the parents listening, Destiny has told you how to make your child a better reader with creative reading. Tell us your website.
So my website is directly creativereadingcoach.com. If you go on there, I do a lot of blogging. So, and it's written from the perspective of a parent trying to understand the science of reading. So it's not written from the perspective of like a teacher. It's written from what you can do as a mom in this moment. If you also want to work with us, there is a form on there that will let you get started. And the biggest thing is, do not let finances be the reason why you don't participate. Like, come on, we got you.
Oh my gosh. So I have been honored by your presence here today. I am so glad that the city of Charlotte worked with the Small Business Task Force on our recovery plan. Let me give a shout out to Mayor Pro Tem Julie Eisel, Council Members Dimple Ajmira, James Mitchell, and Tart Bakari, who supported this Access to Capital program that made it possible for us to hear about the successes in spite of a pandemic. And what you're doing, ladies, I'm just really glad that Charlotte is a place that you choose to do business. Thank you so much for hanging in there, and especially for all the advice that you've given us today.
Thank you.
So we are going to wrap up our mentorship series on children's focus industries. We've had 2 delightful guests. Thank you very much, Destiny Gilliam.
We're so grateful.
And Ann Ward. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a lot of fun.
Yes.